My name is Margot Mansfield. I'm a master's graduate student at the University of Maine. I'm working with Drs. Belknap, Kelly, and Lofton. And our project here today is looking at salt marshes and how they've changed over time in relation to sea level rise. In particular, we're interested in the transition zone, or where the salt marshes are on-lamping onto the freshwater wetlands and the adjacent uplands. Regionally in Maine, sea level rise has been more rapid in the last 300 years than the historic long-term average. We can confirm this with tide gauges. So that's important for ecosystems like salt marshes and freshwater wetlands because they're so controlled by sea level. And if sea level is rising more rapidly, then it might affect where these marshes and wetlands can exist. Salt marshes are usually found between low tide and high tide. Right now we're kind of sitting in the higher high tide, the freshwater bog is right there. The natural tendency is for this salt marsh system to migrate inland, which means that the next thing it's going to run into are these freshwater wetlands or the bogs. If those bogs are going to exist, they need room to migrate inland as well. And this is just something that's going to happen that we're going to have to deal with. Basically, so far we put out transit or core sites to get an overall feel of what the stratigraphy is. And today I want to add more cores more closely spaced right at the transition, because that's what I'm really interested in, is what's going on between the on-lamp of the salt marsh and the beginning of the wetland. The cores are just one part of this. We'll come back out here with a slightly larger group using the GPR, which is ground penetrating radar, and kind of trace the same line starting back probably where the first trees are back there to kind of get elevation difference. And then we'll drag it out all the way into the salt marsh in that direction until the signal dies out because of the saltwater intrusion. The cores help us ground truth what we see in the GPR, which would give us the different layers of sediment that you see underground. One part of the study that might affect the larger community outside of the science is that landowners, such as those that you might see around here, might have property that either is adjacent to salt marshes or these wetlands, or actually includes them. From a management standpoint, understanding how these ecosystems are changed in the past based on looking at cores will help gauge how to plan for how they're going to change in the future.